So let's move to football because there has been a lot of football news and it absolutely needs to be discussed. So we're going to start with who has already committed. So I'm going to pop up a graphic that On3 put out of blue chip guys that have committed since June 1st. So the graphic you'll see on screen is all guys, like I said, that have committed since June 1st. And the big part about this, and it's really important to note, is when Kalen DeBoer was hired, a lot was talked about as to how good his recruiting classes were at Washington. And they were not good, right? And the notion was that Kalen oftentimes won with the least superior team on the field, right? The other teams he was playing against, like when he played against Oregon, when he played in all of these games, he had the less talented team. When he played against Texas, he had a less talented team. But that he was a really, really good on-field coach. But when you come to a place like Alabama, the fan base demands excellence. They demand you to get those top-level recruits. You're not going to be, 20th in recruiting and survive at Alabama. So it was something that was mentioned as to, do you think he can recruit? And all the people that you heard coming out were like, I think he can absolutely recruit. The guy's a really, really personable person. He's really good to talk to. He comes across as very genuine in any conversations you've heard. And everything I had heard sounded really, really good. But it's like, at the end of the day, recruiting will speak for itself, and we'll see what happens. Well, he hit the ground running. Obviously he had to recruit his own roster. He had to get some guys back. He had to get other guys out of the transfer portal. You got guys like Caden Proctor to return. You've had plenty of internal guys that have been rumored to be leaving and then stayed or otherwise. And so, he's done a really, really good job with the roster. But now we're coming into this next recruiting cycle, which he was late getting into from an Alabama perspective because some of the caliber of guys he wasn't even reaching out to at Washington. So it's not like he was moving from one school to another and just saying, hey, follow me from this school to this other school. I'm sure that had some to do. But some of these guys that he's going after now are not guys he would have gone after in Washington, partially due to location, partially due to quality of player, talent, roster makeup, just all together. And he's done a great job. So when we look at the guys that he's landed, there's been 8 blue chip guys that he's landed since June 1st. And there are a couple of other big names on the horizon with crystal balls out, as well as a couple just to keep an eye on where this could be an incredible class. So as of this moment, he got 5-star Dijon Lee here recently to commit to Alabama. Keelan Russell was a flip from SMU. Originally, it was like, Alabama got to flip from SMU. He went on to win the Elite 11 a couple of weeks ago, so that's starting to look like a better and better pickup. Chuck McDonald, corner. Dawson Merritt, linebacker. Jackson Lloyd, tackle. DeBoer, lineman. Carroll, lineman. And then Caleb Edwards. And the Caleb Edwards is a fairly recent addition. He committed earlier today, actually. And so that's obviously a huge one. And then when you look at who else is on the horizon, Ackland Deer is a top running back who had been committed. Let's make sure I get this right. He's the number 2 quarterback per On3 from Mississippi, 6 foot 210, had been committed to Ole Miss since March. And most of the recruiting rankings and sources are saying that he's flipping to Alabama. So that would be another 5-star guy coming on into the fold. Another name to watch out for is not committed, but have had a ton of predictions is Caleb Cunningham, currently the number 2 receiver in the country, 6'2", 180 currently. Decisions sometime in July is all that anybody's ever hearing. There's not been a date picked out as to when he's going to be committing. But Caleb Cunningham is another name that Alabama is very high on his list. And from what we heard coming out of his visit Alabama probably is the decision. Like I said, there's been more predictions rolling in on that one. So it sounds like, Alabama, from a recruiting standpoint, especially in that receiver core and in the skill positions, has done an absolutely incredible job. Two other names just to kind of keep an eye out on, and depending upon who you listen to, is how possible these guys are to come to Alabama. There is Khalil Lockett, who's currently the number 3 receiver per On3. Some of the recruiting sites currently have Texas leading. I know that some other people really liked that Alabama did well Alabama did really, really well on his visit. So potentially Alabama is a dark horse, or not really a dark horse, but is somebody to watch in that one. Some places are thinking that Alabama will hold off Texas, but it really seems like it's probably going to be an Alabama versus Texas battle for Khalil Lockett. That's another 5-star guy. And then Derek Meadows, currently out of Bishop Gorman. He's the number 7 receiver in the country. On3 currently has him predicted to go to Notre Dame. I will say he was on he's 6'6", 205. He was on the visit with, I forget who else. I believe he was on a visit with a couple of the other receivers that have just committed. I know Khalil Lockett was also on the visit with Edwards, the tight end that we just mentioned. So a lot of these guys, Alabama has just had some really, really big recruiting weekends and has been able to lock up, like I said, currently the number 2 class in the country going into July, which is just absolutely massive. And like I said, I still think that there are some guys out there that are yet to be committed, and I really think that Alabama holds a really, really good chance on these guys. Oh, correct. So I got it here. So Derek Meadows visited with Caleb Cunningham, Dijon Lee, that's already committed. There's a Ty Jackson, and a linebacker down to Alabama and Georgia for the most part. DeBoer, I already mentioned. He was a commit out of Viger. Just all these guys that have just done a really, really good job. And Khalil Lockett and Edwards, they visited together. Like I said, currently Khalil Lockett is predicted to go to Texas. Like I said, there are some places thinking that Alabama has a pretty good shot to get the flip, to get him to commit. Not a flip, but to get him to commit. And then additionally, let me see if I can pull it up here. There is another either way, there is Alabama is just in for, there's another lineman I was trying to find. Well, right now I can't seem to pick out the lineman. I will pop his photo up here on the screen if I can get it to, if I can find it here after the recording. But either way, Alabama, just the big thing to note from a recruiting standpoint is, at the end of the day, Nick Saban had built a recruiting machine. He had built a recruiting staff that was evaluating some of the best talent in the country, and then Saban and his coaching staff were able to lock down some of the best talent in the country. And what happened when DeBoer came in, he was able to keep Freddie Roach and was able to keep some of the defensive guys on. And then he was able to bring in a guy like Jamarcus Shepard, who, for all intents and purposes and everything that I've heard, is absolutely beloved by all the players. DeBoer also brought in a coaching style from everyone that I've heard that players just absolutely love. This is a much more player-led team than Saban had. Not to say that Saban's teams weren't player-led. There were advisory councils and a few other things. But at the end of the day, from everything we're hearing, that the players are having a huge factor in this. The players are in on a lot of these recruiting visits. A lot of your recruits are doing a lot of the recruiting for you. Like, for example, your quarterback is doing a huge percentage of your recruiting currently. to get people to, like, Keelan Russell is doing a lot of recruiting to get some of the best receivers in the country. And when you have a guy that wins the Elite 11 and has the respect, not only of the people around him, but obviously the people that could potentially be coming in for him and playing with him, that's huge, right? That gets into your Tuas with Jerry Jeudy and, that group, right? The group that comes in and beats Georgia in the second half of that national championship game when they brought in the freshmen because Tua had come in with them. That's those kinds of guys, right? That's what you get when you have a quarterback and a receiving group, A, that's that talented, and B, that is kind of bonded together because they want to play for each other and want to play for that coach. And I think Jamarcus Shepard has done a great job with that. I think that he is a huge piece of why that's doing so well, but I think that you can't understate how good of a job DeBoer has done since getting to Alabama. I think that he has done an absolutely fantastic job, and and it has just done an incredible job. Oh, got it here. So the lineman that I was mentioning to keep an eye out on is Ty Haywood. There have been quite a few guys that have, let's make sure so I don't get this wrong, Wilt Fong and Chad Simmons, two of the directors of recruiting for On3, have him predicted to go to Alabama currently. He's currently the number 2 rated tackle in the country and number 9 overall prospects. There's another 5-star guy that is, like I said, a not lock, but it's really, really looking like DeBoer is going to be able to close it out. And like I said, currently Alabama is boasting the number 2 rated class, and I think that a top 3 class is looking almost guaranteed. And at the end of the day, from everything that I've witnessed from an on-field perspective with Kalen DeBoer, if he can boast a top 5 class, he's going to have the guys that's needed to be able to compete at the highest level. He's that good of an on-field coach. When you look at what he's done at Washington and what he's done the other places he's coached with the lower, in theory, skill talent, having the depth and the ability of the guys at Alabama with those top-level recruiting classes, I think is going to be absolutely massive. Another